If I may make Cascadia's case. You're still contracted to Cascadia, Sicario. You have a bargain to fulfill, and quite frankly, you're worth more to us now than ever.
Look outside. You think there's a Cascadia left?
It looks worse than it is, promise. My countrymen are scattering to safe zones to shelter in place. We'll return soon enough after this hell passes. When we do, we'll need your help.
Me and my soldiers don't fight losing wars. There's nothing you can offer to get me to die for a lost cause. The Earth itself opened up to fight you. Don't you understand that? Jesus Christ.
Is that enough? Is that everything you want?
You really are that desperate, aren't you? We'll see.
We won't. We have targets on the back of our head. People will come hunting us. I don't care what Kaiser does, because it doesn't involve us. Send them for all I care. We're dead men walking.
Damn it, listen to yourself, woman! Even if me and Monarch let you carry out this death wish of yours, we'll still be caught up with it. Stardust here, at least it sounds like he has an alternative.
Correct.
What's that?
What the hell? It's not for me.
Come on, man, what is it?
Take a look for yourselves.
Is that what I think it is? Oh, shit.
You pull through for us, I will give you more than your freedoms, your lives. It'll be like as if the last 20 years never happened for you. You can have your new start, or continue your life as it is right now. But this, it'll let you do that. You'll be free. You can do whatever you want. Cascadia owes you to have this.
This deal. If we make it, if you give us this, nothing goes back to normal.
What you just heard was the deal. Something that happens halfway through Project Wingman's plot. Hitman team, part of the organization Sicario, were contracted to fight with the Cascadian Independence Force in their efforts against the Federation for several months. For those unfamiliar with the geography, Cascadia is a region that refers to the western side of North America, mostly Alaska and California. In Project Wingman, they're rebelling against the Pacific Federation, who control a huge swathe of land across Pacific coastlines, from Australia to Siberia to California. Cascadia wants to fight back for its independence because in the Federation's efforts to imperialize, they've been exploiting Cascadia's rich access to cordium, a fantasy material that, as you saw, can be rather dangerous. Hitman's efforts turned the tide of the war because they are video game protagonists, and as a last resort before losing their grip on Cascadia completely, the Federation resorted to causing a cordium chain reaction throughout the region, heavily destabilizing, well, everything, even their own operations. Shortly after this, Hitman regroup with their leader of the Sicario mercenary group, and make plans to leave the country. But they're interrupted by Stardust, representing the Cascadian Independence Force, and offer something vaguely ominous and clearly powerful to Kaiser and Hitman team. Despite their clear intentions to leave, as soon as this thing is revealed, Sicario stay put until the end of the war to complete their contract. All the way until Crimson One blows up the capital city of Presidia and duels Monarch over its corpse. I can say pretty confidently that the deal has to be at least two separate things, as Kaiser is the only one to see the first reveal, and when looking at the second one is both surprised and explicitly says it's not for me. The deal's actual contents are a matter of speculation, but there are some clues we can throw together from some various dialogue. Anytime it's referred to, it's capitalized, so these are absolutely referring to it. General Faust describes it as
something that every mercenary will regard as holy.
Crimson refers to it as, and as you heard, Stardust explicitly states it will
be like as if the last 20 years never happened for you.
And it all fits in two briefcases. Most likely some, if not all of it, are documents or badges, as it sounds like paper being shuffled around. I feel like each of these hints on their own has thrown me for a loop of completely unique theories, so let's go through each one. Firstly, what on earth does "it'll be like the last 20 years never happened for you" even mean? This could realistically be referring to only two things. Ignoring the protagonist Monarch, the other two members of Hitman, which are Diplomat and Comic, pretty explicitly had bad careers up until the events of the game. If the deal was an unbelievable amount of money, Stardust would basically be saying it'll be like all those years of failing are finally over. But I have to admit, this cool plot thread But I have to admit this cool plot thread shrouded in mystery just being a ton of money is pretty unsatisfying. Luckily, there's also something else that happened 20 years ago. The fall of the mercenary cabal. What the cabal actually are isn't very clear, but it seems like they're meant to be an Illuminati-type organization controlling things from the shadows. They do barely have a presence in the game, which is fitting for the Illuminati, I suppose. The mercenary cabal have their own entry in the Files archive, and they're mentioned one time during Valkyrie's call, in an exchange between a mercenary pilot and Kaiser. That dialogue with the Cabal is in this mission, which is directly prior to the one that sets off Stardust initiating the deal in the first place. The Cabal's entry in the File archive explicitly mentions their supposed destruction 20 years ago, after they tried to turn Oceania into a mercenary state, which led into the Oceanic War. The Oceanic War is also where a bunch of other stuff is set up, like Cascadia starting to lose confidence in the Federation, as well as the start of Crimson One's career. Considering he's like the antagonist, it's pretty important. So, if Stardust is instead referring to the Cabal's alleged disillusion when he's talking about 20 years ago, that opens up a really big can of worms. On paper, he hates mercenaries, but it seems pretty stupid to make your mercenary handler a guy who dislikes them on principle. Considering that his name, Stardust, is about something that takes a very long time to come to fruition, I think it's fair to say this might be a front. Stardust very well might be a Cabal agent in super deep cover, and the deal was offering Kaiser and Hitman places of power in the Cabal, maybe also showing how deep the Cabal has their hands in things geopolitically. I get this might seem super out of nowhere, and it kind of is, but I can point to a good handful of things that back it up. Cascadian General Faust shows up in the Frontline 59 campaign where you play as Federation reservists, and she knows of the deal before it happens, and like way before it happens.
You're making a deal you know nothing about.
The deal was not a last-minute gamble to keep their best flight team on side, it was premeditated. And when the calamity comes, forcing Stardust's hand to reach out to Hitman, he seems bizarrely completely unfazed by the calamity. Instead, he seems rather calm about the whole thing.
It looks worse than it is. Promise.
If he was in bed with Crystal Kingdom through a Cabal informant and he knew it was coming, that would explain why. Maybe, just maybe, Calamity was an order that Stardust signed off on. This wouldn't be the only thing that makes more sense with this context either. The background behind Mission 11, Showdown, is that both sides in the conflict kept scaling up a furball over the Bering Strait until literally all air power on both sides was sortied. Seems like a pretty stupid choice to continue escalating, especially on the Federation's part, unless it was planned to decimate all air power on both sides. The Cabal are subtly set up all over the game, more so in Frontline 59, which coincidentally starts with some bottom-of-the-barrel reservists being greenlight to fight in the Strait. Eventually it escalates to fighting Cascadian General Faust, who dies seconds before Calamity. Throughout their campaign, there's a reference to some random lord here, out of nowhere referring to Monarch as a signature, just like some mercenary on the Sawiki mission. And at the very end, one of your wingmen has this line. Which, as far as I can tell, is pretty much directly stating that Faust and her offshoot are Cabal. I'm not really sure what else it could even mean. If Faust is Cabal, and she knows about the deal, well, that paints Stardust in an awkward light, now doesn't it? Additionally, in the mission where you finally shoot her down, there's some dialogue that piqued my interest. She's stated to have done all this stuff in this mission, going rogue in a suicide sabotage mission, to blow up Cordium infrastructure in Magadan, which is basically Siberia, and that's pretty like a whatever motivation, but she is so keen to do it that she literally gives up her life and the lives of all those under her as K9 shoots them all down. To their last breath, they are ensuring something is happening. There's also this line, which seems completely unimportant at first.
We've never dumped that much into the Ring of Fire directly. If we do this here, it'll only pressure somewhere else. We probably deal with that than having this facility blow up.
But literally, as she dies, you can just faintly hear Crystal Kingdom give the okay on Calamity. I think Faust was over here as a calculated ruse in league with Cabal elements in the Federation itself to ensure Cascadia blew up, either to make the Federation look bad, or to try to decimate their forces. I also think that she is a warlord from the old Cabal, as every single person that followed her to certain death are mercenaries. I think Stardust was too, given that he's the mercenary handler for Cascadia, and personally reached out to Sicario to hand them their contract as the war started. I get that this last one is petty, but I had to fit this one in too. Faust's tech name is Black Eagle Actual. Do you remember who Gold Eagle Actual was? Faust even specifically states that the Federation HQ is made up of people that she used to work with, and then goes on to say,
We found something terrible in Oceania. Something that every mercenary will regard as holy. If you drag this war out any longer, they will use it. And this world will become a battlefield.
which kinda throws a wrench in things. So, the deal is a transfer of a physical item, apparently, and it has the power to turn the entire world into a battlefield. And it's holy to mercenaries? What does that even mean? So, it's nukes, right? Maybe. If it is in fact a weapon, it can't be WMD tier, because Cascadia would just use it themselves instead of bartering off to Hitman Team. You do get the Project Wingman Mark I after the game ends, but a really cool plane doesn't really seem like something that would destabilize the entire planet by existing, unless Crimson blowing up all of Presidia wasn't a one-off. I think it's much more likely, especially given how horrible Faust refers to it as, and how much of an idiot she thinks Stardust is being, that it's more like trying to offload something on a Hitman team that, while incredibly powerful, is such a large danger that it's better not to have it at all. Basically like scamming someone while trying to sell them on the new hotness. As for what that could be, well, I got some ideas. The first is Icarus Armories. They're the ones who own this oil rig and are responsible for the entire game's namesake. But that's not the Project Wingman Mark I that they just lost, that's the Spear. The Project Wingman Mark I is what Crimson flies in the ending, and his wingmen fly XPFs, which are just worse versions of it. And all those planes are made by Icarus. At the time of the deal, I don't think this plane was done just yet, and so the documents Hitman are getting revealed from the ominous briefcases would not just be this plane, but whatever other horrors Icarus Armories are cooking up. Given that they made the Cordium-powered railguns, which are all over the game, it's safe to say that they're number one when it comes to R&D. Another one is a method or device to synthesize Cordium. Crimson Run refers to the deal as fighting for Cascadia's soul, and given that Cascadia is fighting for its independence because of how much the Federation are exploiting its Cordium, that fits. Cordium is also certainly insanely expensive, which tracks for being holy to mercenaries. And having a way to synthesize the stuff is almost certainly going to be incredibly destabilizing, as everyone now has access to the most volatile resource on Earth, which, as shown, is capable of being turned into railguns and continent-destroying superweapons. So, turning the world into a battlefield? Check. Cordium is also at the very center of the game's plot, arguably even more than mercenaries, so it being related to the concept of the deal makes thematic sense as well. The only thing I don't have a solid connection for is Stardust's claim that it'll be like the last 20 years never happened. I honestly don't really know what that means. I saw some people float the idea a while back that it might mean immortality, but I think that's reaching even for me. Stuff like that isn't really set up throughout the game whatsoever. I want to talk about the protagonists for a little bit, because getting a psych profile for them is probably pretty important for what would sway Monarch to win the war over just straight up leaving. Now, the Crown is a pretty standard Ace Combat protagonist, forever silent, physically defyingly competent, just like Viper. Given that they're a mercenary, you can kinda imprint any interpretation of their character you want. Maybe Monarch genuinely believes in Cascadia's case, maybe he's indifferent and they just fly for money, or maybe they're looking through their cockpit like an excited serial killer every time new signatures pop up on their radar. No matter what, Monarch is totally okay with and even incentivized to destroy Federation troops post-surrender, so I doubt they're exactly a beacon of morality. Though I do personally prefer Monarch as a relentless murderer, the one who I really want to bring up is Driver, the protagonist in Frontline 59. As mentioned earlier, he's a Federation reservist called up during Showdown to cover Crimson's retreat, and then Driver and his squadron of K9 stay on call refuting any and all Cascadian elements from their home of Magadan, displaying a completely unexpected amount of competence and single-handedly thwarting the Cascadian D-Day. I have two reads on Driver. Either he's a Cabal sleeper agent planted to stop certain elements from getting too ambitious, or he's an old man who wants to go home already. There's pretty much no in-between. He's pretty heavily implied to secretly be a super prestigious pilot. His censored rank can only be colonel or captain with that amount of characters, and there's also this line in the final mission. Brick also says,
I think you and Driver were born for this life, Cobb. You've both got enough fire in you to keep on fighting.
and Driver is pretty heavily implied to be crazy. With Monarch, their silence allows your interpretation of the character to be much more open, but with the Driver, his unending silence while being in the position of a reservist means either only one of two things. Either he is completely sick of this whole flying thing. Monarch is a mercenary, they chose that life. The Driver just wants to get back to getting speeding tickets above ground instead of underground. Or it was a position that Driver got themselves into last minute intentionally, and K9's surprise performance is entirely because he planned it. He's staying silent because he doesn't want to let anyone in on the gigantic conspiracy that he very well might be a part of. If they interpret that to mean he's insane, whatever, let him. I have to assume there is something up with Driver, because he doesn't question the briefing for express lane whatsoever. Want me to fly through a tunnel that's a couple of miles long? Why not? I'm an ace combat protagonist, those come with the job. The briefing literally describes him as maybe another pilot we're gonna have to scrape off the wall, and Driver doesn't care at all. He's just like, nah, I'd win. I can only imagine that's either because he knows this is secretly his purpose, or because he's like, well, it's either this, or I don't get to see my husband for another week. Honestly, goals. Why do I truly believe all this Cabal stuff? Well, the Cabal is set up so much and so subtly throughout the game that it has to mean something. It can't all be for nothing. The last thing anyone says to you right before the deal happens is that mercenaries are waiting for when they rule. Logic tells me that everything is added up to Kaiser being crowned a new Cabal lord with Monarch as his signature, like what the mercenaries said on Valkyrie's Call. But long after the deal, right before the finale of the game, I spied this line. Monarch and his mercenaries, huh? Monarch isn't really referred to like an ace, he's referred to much more like a boogeyman. There is so much dialogue where people are like, oh my god, it's the crown, explosion sound effect, which is far more notoriety than any actual ace would ever have. Far more people care about Monarch than Kaiser or even Sicario, and you can chalk this up to being an ace combat world where planes somehow have a 200 missile autoloader, but given that their name is literally Monarch, which is the exact same position as a Kaiser, I wouldn't be surprised if the Cabal offered Monarch and Kaiser lordship rather than just Kaiser. Seems like it'd be something pretty holy for a mercenary. But it was a physical item, remember? So, this is my final guess for what Faust actually found in Oceania. A council. She came across the Council of Cabal Lords, which are basically the Illuminati. When she's referring to using it and how it will turn the world into a battlefield, she's saying utilizing the Cabal's power and fully unleashing them would be pretty disastrous for the world stage. After I wrote the script and edited about 75% of this video, I went to get footage for this part. You might notice that my recording sounds very different, and it's because I'm recording this weeks after. I wanted footage of Faust saying her dialogue before she dies, which takes about half an hour of flying in circles as she talks to herself, and I was very surprised to see that she basically directly confirms my theory. I was freeballing it, but apparently I was right on the money. And the deal? Cascadian General Stardust, or Cabal Operative Stardust in deep cover, offered Kaiser and Monarch lordship in the Cabal. The reason Faust thinks Stardust is being an idiot with the deal is that he's jeopardizing the confidentiality of their positions and risking it all to ensure the Cascadian War goes as planned. And all by offering lordship to some random ace and their charismatic boss. Even in an ace combat universe, you gotta admit that's a stretch. But evidently, it's too tempting an offer to turn down. Kaiser goes on to make Cascadia into a mercenary haven with his new position, as stated in the Files Archive, but Hitman? The last recording of Hitman Team is from just after Crimson's ambush at Presidia, recorded from the half-destroyed radio transceiver in Comic's plane after it crashed. Diplomat finds her, and they both look up into the sky to see Monarch dogfighting with Crimson, dueling over Cascadia's soul. Monarch could have gone literally anywhere. Given that the only real lead is that Cascadian MPs are looking for them, Hitman Team is probably somewhere far from Cali, getting themselves acquainted with the New World Order. As Comics said, nothing will ever go back to normal for them. Or, it's a plain and an unfathomable amount of money, but that's not nearly as interesting. Or something I haven't thought of. I'd take suggestions. I want to give a very earnest thanks to the artists that helped me with this video. I might be able to throw everything together in a video editor, but without them, there would be nothing to look at in the first place. Join my Discord because apparently people don't know it exists, and thanks to my patrons. And thanks to my patrons, Emmy and Potato especially. Like, comment, subscribe, you know the drill, and have a good night. Also, play Project Wingman. Seriously, this is like the best game of 2022. Elden Ring doesn't have shit.